Hi, everybody, and welcome to Pop Therapy, a podcast where we explore the intersection between psychology and pop culture. There's so much to unpack, so let's get started. Well, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I couldn't do this without you. I really appreciate it. So one of the things I wanted to discuss today, hold on, I feel like I sound a little weird, and so I'm just fixing the sound in real time. And I'm going to leave that in because this is real, okay? Anyway, so I recently read an article from The Cut that was titled, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't know if this was like verbatim, the title of it, but it was something like How IFS Ruined My Life. And IFS is a pretty well-known therapeutic intervention. It's one that I've used before, and it's one that my therapists have used on me. And it's basically, and IFS stands for Internal Family Systems, right? And basically, my understanding is that I'm going to try to boil this down as simply as possible, but that we all have different parts of us that think different things at different times, right? So you might, let's say, get a gift from someone, and there's a part of you that thinks, oh my gosh, this was so nice that this person got me this gift. And another part of you that thinks, but I hate the gift, or I don't want this gift. It's a watch, let's say, right? A person gets you a watch. And on one, there's a part of you that thinks, oh, that's so sweet, they got me a watch. And another part of you that thinks, but I don't need a watch. I don't want a watch. I already have plenty of watches. And it takes a look at the inner workings of an individual like a family, right? That there's different parts of you organized in different ways, and they can all think multiple things at the same time when presented with the same, stimuli, with the experience or moment or something like that. So one of the ways in which this has shown up in my own therapy is let's say there is some, I'm talking about something really challenging or really difficult, or I'm talking about, let's say, an experience I had where I felt really, really anxious or really, really angry. And we sort of take a look at all the different parts of me that maybe are operating at that time. So there might be the part of me that's known as the protector, right? And that's the part of me that's really working hard to protect Omar from getting hurt. And then there might be another part of me that's the more vulnerable part of me, or the inner child. Maybe it's child Omar, 8-year-old Omar, that, is also operating and trying to, seek healing or closure or what have you. And you can, in my own therapy, you can name those parts different things, like the protector or the CEO or what have you. Formal trainings, they have more specific names that I'm not really familiar with because I haven't gone through the training. So anyway, that's a little bit of a crash course, probably a terrible crash course. But in any case, the article goes into the ways in which this particular therapy and the way that it was used on a patient basically led to, I should not be laughing, sorry, but basically led to all these horrible outcomes. One of them being that this woman that got the therapy basically ended up cutting out the rest of her family from her life. And that there was, some accusations of false memories being implanted in the patient, right? The patient, after a year or so of this therapy, or after some time of this therapy, came out with all these memories and all these accusations. And it's a lot of he said, she said stuff. It's, it's the family saying, but that never happened. And it's this patient saying, that did happen. And, the memories are really, really traumatic and horrible stuff. And so the article goes into discussing this particular family while also interviewing other family members and other ex-patients who spoke pretty disparagingly about this particular therapeutic intervention and the clinic, this particular clinic that was using this intervention. So I read the article and, my initial reaction was like, I was really anxious and nervous because I was like, oh, there are some aspects of IFS that I use on patients, you know what I mean? And I've found it really helpful and patients have found it really helpful. But of course, my mind goes into, oh my gosh, am I causing harm? Should I not be using this intervention? Maybe I should have done more research on it. And it's one of those things where it just like brings out the part of me that is always worried about whether or not I'm a good therapist. Is like what I've noticed. Like that's the part that comes out in me. And yeah, the article basically says more research needs to be done, right, on this particular intervention, which I totally agree with. I mean, I think more research for everything. I don't think more research is exclusive to IFS. I think we should be doing more research on any therapeutic intervention just to like know more. Why not? I'm all for knowing more. So I can't get enough of knowing more. So I'm like really, really pleased about that. But it didn't really have any other kind of solution or explanation other than, therapists should be careful when implementing interventions, which I totally agree with. And, therapists should, try to do as much of their own research as possible. Totally agree with. And that, therapists should be careful to implement any kind of one-size-fits-all approach to their patients, which, again, totally agree with. There was also some shady stuff from that was discussed in the article. Some shady stuff about the inventor of this intervention, like the guy that came up with it, the institute he created, the training institute, the clinic. And there was some sort of like ethically not great stuff that was reported in this article. So, it's all alleged, I suppose. Like, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But it's what the article reported. Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason why I'm talking about this is because, one, it's helpful for me to get these thoughts out, especially when they're like anxious thoughts or when I'm like, oh no, am I a crappy therapist? But the other reason why I'm bringing it up is because, and this is an excellent segue into our guest who's been waiting patiently in the green room. Just kidding. This is just a regular Zoom call. But I'm really excited to get some thoughts from my next guest, who is also a therapist, a licensed mental health counselor, LMHC. She is a colleague. We used to work together. She is a trauma therapist. That is her bread and butter. So I'm so excited to talk about all things healing and trauma and therapy with our next guest. Please welcome into your hearts, Christy O'Shoney. Hi.
Thank you, Omar. Hi.
I'm
so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here, especially because of this article that I read. Did you hear about this article by any chance? Okay, you are nodding so deeply.
Famous. Yeah, I am famous for reading the headline of an article and being like, I should get to that, and then I don't get to that. This is one of those. One of those. So, I'm glad I'm here to offer literally nothing from my experience of reading that article. But I do have some experience with parts work.
Yeah,
like
parts
you haven't
work.
done.
That's the other. I was trying to remember that. Yes, parts work. Yeah. And I'm interested. Can I say again, completely uneducated response because I have not engaged with this article. Okay.
But my sense, I think there's like a danger in conflating a modality and a therapist, right? Like there's a difference between a modality is bad
yes.
and the application of that modality by this particular therapist was not healthy.
That was my initial takeaway from that. Was like the way these therapists implemented the intervention sounded bonkers, quite frankly.
Oh, do you have an example? I can't.
So, for example,
I'm so
one of the accounts that the article touches on was how folks in there would be group sessions as well, and that allegedly folks in the group sessions would sort of exist within the group through the lens of one of the parts. And so, for example, allegedly one person was like, there's a part of me that is a tree, and I'm a willow tree, and my name is Willow. And then they were a tree. And
you were like, I love that. I love Buffy.
Sure. Okay, well,
of course
that's
you're
how
Willow.
you know my guest knows me, because you better believe one of the thoughts I had was like, oh, Buffy. Oh, Willow's best friend. Amazing. Yeah, you should absolutely be Willow. But or that folks would like take on the persona of a dog or an animal, and it just seemed a little bit like, oh, you're describing a circus to me. None of this sounds contained. None of this sounds explored. Like, it all sounds really just like the Wild West, just like lawless to me, whatever this clinic was doing.
And like, without utility, like, what would be the point
Excellent.
of being someone's dog? I mean,
Right.
maybe I would need to talk to this therapist, but yeah, I'm with you. Offhand, that feels pretty wild.
And that was, just to echo your thought, like, separating the therapist from the modality, I think is definitely worth noting for sure. And, and again, like, the takeaway at the end of the article, and I would actually love to hear your thoughts. Like, if you get to it, we can talk obviously offline about it, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So there was another article that the Cut referenced, done by other researcher therapists, like I think social work researchers, who talked about like some of the gaps in this intervention, some of the things to be mindful of, some of the things like to keep an eye out for. It did seem a little bit more like, I think y'all are pissed off at the clinician, rightfully so. This dude sounded, again, just off the wall. But I don't know. It just left me feeling all sorts of, like, thinking all sorts of things and wondering about all sorts of things, which I can appreciate an article that just makes me ask myself more questions, because I feel like that's a way of keeping myself accountable. But I didn't necessarily walk away thinking, oh, this is a terrible intervention. This is dangerous. This is harmful. And that's kind of what that was like a little bit the angle of the article itself. At least that's how it seemed to me.
Yeah. It makes me think of a couple things. One, to me, the focus is less IFS is bad and more this therapist is maybe not worth their salt. But also just the reminder that therapists do, especially private practitioners, we operate with a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
We operate with a lot of privacy, and people don't know what happens in the therapy room, and except for the two people in there, unless you're like, recording sessions for supervision or something like that, which does rarely happen with like lots of consent. And so it kind of is a perfect breeding ground for somebody to take like a little piece of information that they have or some training that they have and like really misuse it without much repercussion to them. And so it is a valid concern.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to read this article, but if they were pretending to be their dog in a tree, that feels not super representative of IFS as I understand it.
Agreed. Right. Yeah. That wasn't how I understood it, that the parts of you could literally be anything. Like, it could be a coat, it could be a tree. That is not how I understood it at all. So that's why I was like, oh my gosh, have I accidentally been implementing this like harmful intervention? I don't know. Again, like, that's of course
but
my
thank
mind
you for
goes,
naming that too. I can't remember the article specifically, but there was one. I think it was on self-disclosure in therapy, which like I use judiciously. Like, I talk about my life in meaningful ways more than anything. Like, I talk about my reactions to my clients.
Right.
and it was a very critical take on self-disclosure. And I had a bunch of like, well, good for you that you're like, you take it in and you internalize. For me, I got like really defensive. I was like, no, you don't get it. But also underneath that was a deep sense of like, oh, am I doing something harmful? Am I doing something bad?
I read it on a plane. And I was really, not to be dramatic, but I was kind of freaked out. I kind of had a really, really anxious moment. There were other things going on for me professionally that were like at the core of why I was particularly sensitive to this. Every once in a while, there will be something that'll happen at work where I'm just like, oh, am I a terrible therapist? You know what I mean? Like you'll get feedback from a client or whatever. And my immediate thought was, oh, I'm awful. I'm terrible at this. So this article came at like the perfect time. I was already in that headspace.
Right.
Then I read this article and I'm like, amazing. This confirms it. I suck at this. But I've come down.
I want to relieve you of that part that wants to speak negatively about my dear friend Omar.
Thank you. Yeah. And then, I'm like rethinking all of my own personal parts work that my couples therapist has used, that my individual therapist has used, that I would always walk away from being like, that was so helpful, that was so amazing. And then I'm reading this article and I'm like, wait, was it amazing? Did I hallucinate that? Am I, my mind goes in a million different directions, unfortunately. For better or for worse. There's
that expression, that really gross expression of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Right. Of like, I don't know. It always freaks me out to imagine. But right, like yes, there are parts of this that are problematic, and so much of it is beneficial. And at least, I can't speak to the research, but anecdotally, people have such positive experiences seeing themselves in parts rather than just
I always
homogenous
appreciated whole. I always appreciated this idea of, and I know this is something that you've talked about, I've seen it on your social media, this idea of multiple feelings existing at once, like complex feelings all happening at the same time. And that is that's what I thought was sort of at the core of IFS, or one of the core tenets of IFS is, there's like lots of complex feelings. It's not black and white. It's not linear. It's not wrapped up in a neat little bow. You can have multiple conflicting thoughts and feelings at the exact same time about the exact same thing. And I really appreciated that.
Let it be complex. Yeah.
Let it be complex. Really, yes.
Honestly, because and I think we take for granted how new of an idea that is. Like there was a time where that's like, okay, you have multiple personality disorder then, right? Which is the name for that. Now it's dissociative identity, right? But the concept of parts is kind of new, and it's really relieving to those of us who experience ambivalence, which is everybody, like multiple feelings about the same thing. It's really normal, and it has not historically been normalized. So, yeah.
I think that this is an excellent segue into talking a little bit about your wheelhouse. Tell me a little bit about, for those that don't know, talk a little bit about your expertise, what you've been working on, the clients you see. Talk a little bit about like your area of expertise.
Yeah, so I am a trauma therapist, and I just really like that you call it my bread and butter because it makes it sound so much more like light and fun than trauma therapist implies. But I do think it's like a ton of fun. Yeah. So the types of clients I see, I tend to. Have you read Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents? Yes. Okay.
Well, I listened to it. I mean, whatever.
That's reading.
Okay.
Oh, I've got a big opinion on that. You read it. You read it.
I always feel like I'm lying a little bit when I read it. I'm like, well, I listened to it, but like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So that book title comes to mind for the type of folks I see. And in that book, there's this idea of like internalizers versus externalizers. Right. Internalizers being the ones who like are more prone to like shame and anxiety. Externalizers kind of like everybody else is the problem. I tend to see more of the internalizers. I really kind of in my head think of them as like class president types, and they would never say that they're class president types because they're internalizers, and they're like, I'm not good enough to be an internalizer. Right. Meanwhile, I'm like, you're amazing. Yeah. And so that's sort of what I'm working with, and of course, it's unsurprising that kind of tends to be like my leaning as well. Yeah. Class president, internalizer, taking things really personally and hard. Yeah.
So you see a little bit of that, or maybe a lot of bit of that in yourself and in how you like relate to the world as like class president, internalizer sort of deal.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I was the choir president, though.
Work.
Not the class president. Didn't have the guts to go out for that, but I was the choir president.
How, when people ask, I mean, I'm imagining that folks when they talk to you about trauma, there's also a conversation about like, well, what is it? For our listeners, talk a little bit about what trauma is, and I'll just let you, take it away. What trauma, like, what is that?
Beautiful. Yeah, I like that we're talking about trauma first, as it's like the big umbrella and not complex trauma, because that's sort of like the more micro category. Lots of definitions of trauma. The one I kind of lean on is that trauma is anything that disrupts your natural processing. And so that thing that disrupts the processing, it has to cause harm. And it either requires intervention and or strategies to manage the harm. Yeah. And so the example I like to use, I like to start first with like physical trauma. So like say you break a bone, then the natural process of a bone is you have it and it's intact and it's like you put weight on it. Right. And if you break it, typically you need somebody trained to kind of mend it, to kind of reset the bone. I've never broken a bone, actually. No, I've broken a finger.
You've broken a finger? I've never broken a single bone, knock on wood. I do not want to go through that. No,
I broke a finger. Okay. And it was. And did it get reset? No. And is it still wonky? Yes.
Perfect.
So, yeah. But so ideally, you get it treated. If you don't get that intervention, you're going to have like misalignment. You're going to have things like chronic pain, nerve damage. Right. You might have limited mobility, and you might have to like compensate with your with other parts of your body to adjust for the pain. You might avoid certain situations to avoid the pain. And so emotional psychological trauma is a lot like the broken bone that doesn't get reset. And so I
appreciate that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say I appreciate that analogy because I hear lots of conversations about trauma, most of which sound good, right? You know, most of which I can borrow from or take from. And at the same time, it feels like it's getting bigger and bigger and encompassing more and more things. And that's where I also wonder, okay, how much are we letting is everything trauma? Then if everything is trauma, then nothing is trauma. And how do we differentiate? And
I'm of two minds about this. I have a similar reaction to you, where it does seem like meaningless at a certain point. Yeah. There's another part of me that's like, maybe we all just should get a little bit more comfier with the idea of trauma as just a part of life that, like anything, we want to put on a spectrum, right? And I think it's important to note, I think people don't always realize this, that something can be traumatic without causing trauma. And so trauma is usually, in the modality that I practice in ADP, which is a terrible name, accelerated experiential dynamic psychotherapy.
That's a mouthful. Whoa.
It's like, why? But yeah, so in that modality, we talk about trauma as like normal human emotion to an abnormal circumstance or an upsetting circumstance. and then it is mixed with aloneness, or like the inability to exercise the resources or to utilize the resources that you would need to deal with it. And so a lot of times people go through traumatic situations, but they are really, really resourced. They have people around them who can support them.
I see.
Yeah.
So the I guess like the symptoms don't manifest in ways that we might see in a client who isn't well resourced, who doesn't have maybe like a strong support network, or doesn't have a therapist, or just like the resources to help them heal and or recover from the traumatic experience.
Completely. I think a lot about like the animal world and how animals have like built-in mechanisms for discharging energy, right? Like,
You
know, say like there's a antelope has to run away from the wildebeest. That
works.
In Lion King, that's all I'm thinking of. I don't know. And you know, when the chase is over, you get to use all that energy, and also you discharge. They call it like pronking. They're like leaping up and down to like, get rid of that excess energy. We don't have like a built-in system like that,
right?
But we do have like holding each other. We have talking about our feelings, you know. But you have to be in an environment where that's available to you.
That can happen. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that my very first therapist introduced me to was this concept of capital T trauma, lowercase t trauma. And that was my first foray into the expansion of trauma as I knew it. In my training, it was very, and this isn't an indictment on, you know, on the training that I got, but when we talked about trauma, it was capital T trauma. It was, you know, veterans coming back from war, people that experienced, you know, just like really, really horrific things, whether they themselves went through it or they saw someone else go through a horrific experience and the trauma that caused. So, you know, the very sort of well spoken about kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Example is, you know, someone who comes back from war who is triggered by fireworks, and you know, they anytime they hear fireworks, they get panic attacks, or they can't withstand the discomfort and they have to remove themselves, or suddenly they're flooded with memories of bullets whizzing over their heads. And that was sort of like, in our training, that was trauma. Right.
Yep, exactly.
And then this idea of lowercase t trauma, I was like, oh, interesting. Like I didn't know about that, you know, at the time.
Yep, I was thinking about that too as we were logging on today, because, you know, I think that is a helpful separation. And there's something about little t that, for my clients who have heard that, they come in being like, well, I just have the little t version.
Yeah,
I just have like, it's not a big deal. And actually what little t means is that it is like the habitual exposure to different triggers to the point where it's sort of like the water you're swimming in, and where you don't really know anything different. So it can actually be hard to discern, like, what was I supposed to get from this environment? What was it supposed to get to feel safe? And it can be that much harder to undo,
of course,
because it was just like so pervasive.
It becomes normalized, right? I often have heard clients say something like, oh, but that's like just the way it was. That's how it was. That's like, and then once you have more conversations with them or expose them to different ways of being or different ways of processing something, that's when they sort of reach a point where they say, wait a minute, so this isn't normal? Or like, wait a minute, I thought everybody went through this, or I thought everybody did it this way. And that's when they sort of realize, like, oh, the little t can be insidious in that way.
Yes.
Because it becomes the new normal. Yeah.
Do you ever have the moment with a client where they literally think they're telling you like a funny little anecdote?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, babe. Yeah. Like, it's right. It's not funny. It's not.
Sometimes I'll have to be like, sometimes I'll have to be like, I understand the joke that you're making is objectively like the structure of a joke. Like, it is a joke. You are being funny. You are being clever.
Yep.
And that's really terrible. That's like a really, really awful thing that you experienced.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's so kind of you, because you don't want to invalidate, right? Like, or shame them for laughing through it.
Right.
But I'm often like, I imagine you're laughing at the absurdity of it. I hope you're laughing at the absurdity of it. But
I like that.
But probably they're laughing because they're uncomfortable, or it's been told in their family as a funny story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my bread and butter, actually. Folks who come in laughing at their trauma are really not even quite signed on to the idea that they have trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about capital T trauma, is that I think because it's had more time in the spotlight, so to speak, that it seems more obvious to us, and the little t trauma is sort of like, oh, that's just life. That's, oh, that's, that's, again, like, that's just the way things were back then. Like, I'll hear that a lot. Like, they didn't know any better. That's just the way things were back then. And while I agree there might be some truth to that, there's lots of things we didn't know back then. It still doesn't, I still have to help the client understand. Yeah. And that's still trauma. That's still traumatic. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Totally. And, two things can be true at the same time. Yep, your parents were doing their best. God bless. I'm sure they had their own trauma. And what you went through with them was also traumatic.
Yes. Yeah. And little t trauma, complex trauma. I like the term developmental trauma.
Developmental trauma. Okay.
I mean, it also includes, like, prolonged sexual abuse. It includes, like, neglect, like things that we would look at objectively and say, oh, that's really serious. But because it is just like your lived experience at this very vulnerable time in your life, you develop all of these narratives around how to think about it. And unfortunately, usually the narrative is it's my fault, right? Because it is so upsetting for a kid to, like, even conceive of the idea that their parent is incapable. That I often think we're just, like, choosing between different kinds of pain. The softer pain there is, well, okay, I guess I'm the screw up. I guess it's me. And so that's what we as therapists often are seeing coming into the therapy room, clients who just kind of, like, take that as fact. Like, I'm a screw up. It's my fault. I'm bad.
Yeah. Do you think, or I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on why that seems to be the default. That feels so pervasive, and this is purely anecdotal, but it does, in my experience, seem to be the default setting of, well, it must have been my fault. What is it about the softer pain that seems more compelling to some of these clients, or maybe even more true? I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you think for so many that is the default setting.
Yeah, lots of thoughts on this. One, I think whatever is more visceral is more true. And saying I'm bad, even just, like, me saying it right now, makes my stomach hurt. Yeah. Right? Like, it's visceral, and it ends up feeling very true.
Yeah.
But two, it's like this warped sense of agency that we can have.
Totally.
Where it's like, oh, 100%. Okay, if I'm bad, then all I have to do is work on not being bad.
I'll just be good. Then I just have to be good. Yeah.
But then I can't be good. And so,
totally.
Yep. Yeah, which makes so much sense that we're just, like, grasping for agency, especially for those who experienced, I think a condition for developmental trauma is you're stuck in it, right? Like, you don't have the agency that the grown-ups have.
Right.
And so you at least have the agency to say really awful things to yourself.
Right.
Right. Like, so it's
there is
a strange power grab.
I think, that's a really good point. That there's some comfort in the power grab. There's something comforting about, well, I can control this part of it. I can control what I say to myself. And there's something about, like, organizing your identity around that does feel, quote unquote, empowering in a way that's ultimately harmful, but nevertheless, that I feel like that is the intention, is to, like, reclaim a little bit of power when there was none before.
Yep. And it's a compensation for the pain, right? It's like we're talking about the broken bone,
right.
and you're using other parts of your body and to not put pain on that part,
right?
Like this is just one of many strategies that people who experience this kind of trauma, one that they'll use.
Yeah. There's so many, thankfully, there's a lot of, ideas and thoughts and research and interventions to help different folks with their trauma. One of the ways that really speaks to me, that I really, really find quite compelling, and that you also practice in, is inner child work. Talk to our listeners a little bit about what that is, please, because I feel like it's said a lot lately. I feel like it's kind of blown up, and I want to make sure that we have a discussion about like what it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just have a vision in my mind of everybody stopping the podcast right now, hearing that phrase, inner child work, which is like
rolling
totally my
eyes,
projection,
like,
right?
Yeah.
There's a cringe element to it. There is, and I so relate to that.
Totally.
Many years ago, and even still today, like the something being cheesy in the realm of mental health, it was like really hard for me to latch onto. Unfortunately, like some of the best, most effective stuff does just have a cheesy ring to it, and inner child work is one of those things. And I will say, I think I've always done some version of inner child work. I'm like incorporate attachment a lot in what I do. But,
attachment theory, correct? Right.
Attachment theory, yeah. But it wasn't until I became a parent that I was like, oh. Like it really unlocked something for me about just how quickly this stuff gets internalized.
Oh my God.
Right now I have a toddler, and she's super verbal. She's talking all of the time, even at night when she should be sleeping. But so like I get to like hear her internal dialogue, and in her play, like I see ways that like my parenting comes through. And it's just this like little look into what we kind of forget, like a period of our lives that literally we have amnesia for, right? But that really does get implicitly internalized as memory. So I think a lot about how parenting becomes self-talk. So yeah, I can speak more like specifically on what inner child work is, but I'm
please. Yeah, you have the mic. Literally, you have a mic. So yeah,
I sure do. So
hell yeah.
In the modality that I practice, I mentioned it earlier, AADP. We kind of do what's essentially like an exposure therapy sort of thing. They would never call it that, but it is a bit, to be able to like look back on a scene from when you were really vulnerable, likely a child, and sort of I always talk about it like what is it, like A Christmas Carol, where Ebenezer Scrooge like gets taken back in time and he can like look and observe his childhood self. I always, for some reason, need to reference Ebenezer Scrooge, and almost no one
It's a great
cares.
reference. Yeah, it works. No, it totally works.
So I'm like, me, you, Ebenezer Scrooge, are watching this scene play out, and one of my favorite questions to ask first off is, what is your feeling towards the kid in this scene? And you would think it's so obvious. It's like, oh, I feel sad for them. I feel compassion. A lot of people with complex PTSD have the experience of kind of like revulsion. They can feel some disgust, right?
Which I think is some of the cringe that we feel that you just touched on, right? Like I get the cringe and I experience it. And when I zoom out a little bit, I don't even have to zoom out that much. When I zoom out a little bit, I tend to notice, the cringe it's a little bit of me kind of like being a little revolted by my, just like, ugh, like, I can't believe I did that. Like a little like grossed out by myself, or just like being super judgmental of myself. So I
Okay,
I think
you're really helping me understand my reactions to it too. Because and just like children are vulnerable. We would ideally like to be invulnerable, right? And so like it's we don't necessarily always want to identify with that part of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so in ADP we call it a portrayal, where you're sort of going through the process of actually using the feelings that you have. Now, if it's disgust, you don't want to use those feelings, but you can bring in, a dear friend. You can bring in a parent figure, like somebody who you see as an ideal parent. If our relationship is really good, you can bring in me.
Yeah.
Right. And we can imagine, like, what does this kid need? What does this kid need to hear? What's going on inside of this kid that nobody knows?
Oh, wow.
And
so
how can we address that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, I'll say people end up just like rescuing their childhood selves and like bringing them to their apartment, right? Which is such a sweet idea. Just like, here is the life you have now, you get to have now, where you do have so much autonomy and you do have people who love you. And that itself can be really healing. But that's kind of like the more grand idea of inner child work. But there are ways you can do it kind of like on a micro scale, just like thinking about, what would a good parent say here? Like if I'm sitting here like calling myself a piece of shit,
right?
It's like, okay, well, a good parent would not say that,
right?
So let's try that again.
So let's start there. Yeah. Right.
But interestingly, I am sure you've had this experience too, if you work in this way, but like sometimes clients just they really don't know. They don't know what a good parent would say because they didn't have one.
Yeah. In those instances, how do you usually respond to the client in those instances who say in earnest, I really don't know what a good parent would say, or I'm actually unclear about what this kid themselves, right? Like what they need in that moment. How do you help them navigate the uncertainty of that?
Yeah. So this is where, and so some people don't think this has a place in therapy, but this is where self-disclosure I do think is really useful. I cannot help but like, I have access to this developing identity, right?
Course.
Like I am a parent and so often I'm like, I totally get that. Do you want to hear what I might do and just like see how it feels?
That's great.
Right? Like as a parent, how I might talk to my kid. The example I really like to use is like when you don't want to do something and you're just like beating yourself up or like you're delaying doing something, right? There's a lot of times this is where people can feel a lot of shame. And that feels like so similar to the example I have with my kid, like somewhat regularly, where she's like, I don't want to go to school, right? Which is so common. Like every kid,
totally. I'm like,
goes
amen,
through that.
sister. You and me both.
Right?
You
but
and
like,
me both.
What a lovely response that is, and that is not what so many of our parents did. Because they didn't know, they didn't think it was good parenting to just be like, wow, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense that you don't want to go to school. Or how about this one? Tell me more.
Right.
Like, tell me more about why you don't want to go to school.
Yeah.
We forget to kind of like get curious about ourselves. Like, oh, maybe there's something underneath that. Maybe there's a really good reason.
Right.
You know? And sometimes it is just that act alone that can have this soothing effect that can then allow you to do the thing.
Right. That is, I mean, I was going to say paradoxically what ends up happening, but maybe that's an inappropriate or an inaccurate use of that word. But I find that folks fear that getting curious about it will end up causing the thing not to happen. And what I try to explain to them is like, actually the opposite thing happens. It's like massaging a knot a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you get rid of the knot and then you improve your range of motion, like with whatever muscle it is that you're using. And so when you massage it out, you're actually better suited, better equipped to then do the thing when you like give it space to sort of breathe. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm stealing that.
Please.
I'm stealing the massaging the knot. Are you ever talking to a therapist and you're like, Damn, that's good.
Oh,
Okay,
my couples therapist, I've talked about this before, so my listeners are sick of this. She's so good that and this is, you're going to notice a theme, Christy. She's so good. I was like, wait, am I bad at my job?
Yeah.
She was that good. I was like, wait, maybe I should not be doing this because she is, and I mean this in the best way possible. I'm like, she is kicking my ass. Like I leave those sessions and I'm sweating. I'm like, damn, that was work. She put my ass to work today. You know what I mean?
Yes, I love that so much.
So it happens all the time.
Even that is such a good example. Like, she's making me work, right?
Yeah.
Like that. This doesn't have to be like mushy gushy.
Exactly. Right.
Like, it can be very like, okay, I believe in you.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm sure your therapist isn't like sitting there berating you and
no, not at
saying you are bad.
Not at
she's
all. Could
she's
you
like
imagine?
saying things that are like challenging you, but like with a
Yes.
sense of confidence in you.
Yeah.
That's good parenting.
Right.
And ideally, the outcome of therapy, the best outcome is to internalize the therapeutic relationship.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
And so, yeah.
And what we mean by that, actually, so when you say internalize the therapeutic relationship, explain a little bit more to folks who've maybe never been to therapy what you mean by that. Because I 100% agree. I even often tell clients during the first or second session that that is part of my hope here. So please take it away. What is that? What does that mean?
Yes. Well, first off, I can't reference a specific study, but I'm sure you've heard this too, that like the research really bears out that modality, everything aside, like relationship is the number one predictor of positive health, of positive outcomes in therapy.
Your relationship with your therapist, right?
With your therapist.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Which I agree. I tell folks that in the early stages, just to be like, so if you're not feeling it, we either need to like process that together. We need to make sure that that's getting addressed. And also it's okay. Like if we're not the best fit, because it's so important. That's how vital it is. But in terms of internalizing the relationship, I kind of mean it literally. I've had clients who so sweet are like, I've got a little Christy walking around with me, which
that's so lovely.
I'll take any day. Like it's so. I like, one, that feels good to me, but also I love hearing that because it means like we've had enough repetition of experience where they could reliably count on, okay, here's what Christy would say in this situation. Here's how Christy would treat me. And ideally that's what therapy should do. That's why I tend to think it's so much more, regardless of the modality you're practicing, it's always experiential because you're having all of these like subcortical kind of experiences that are so much more important than any piece of like insight a therapist can share.
Yeah. It really, I mean, I often tell clients that our relationship could, if they wanted it to, could serve as a model for future relationships, could serve as a template, right, for future relationships. And I make it clear that there are some very obvious differences between our relationship, a therapeutic one, like I'm getting paid. You're not paying your best friend. Fair enough. However, there are elements of this relationship that at the core are still important in any relationship, like trust, consistency, reliability, right? Like one of the important things about the therapeutic relationship is that like every Wednesday at 3, I'm here every Wednesday at 3, right?
Reliable.
And if I can't be here, I will tell you. And we will reschedule or we will resume the following Wednesday at 3. There's a level of consistency that they can rely on that is important in any relationship to varying degrees, right, depending on the relationship itself. But that's that's one of the things I try to sort of make clear and almost like offer them. Like this could be a template for you. Like we can take certain things about this relationship that you appreciate or that are meaningful to you and then apply them to other relationships to help strengthen them or to help you assess for like, is this relationship a good fit for my life sort of thing?
Completely. And with that consistency piece is so, I mean, like those are the conditions for secure attachment. Like
100%.
I know
right.
what I'm going to get from this person.
Yep.
I know who I can run to. And that's what's being built in therapy. That's why I just so believe in it.
Yeah. Because it is a relationship ultimately. And what I try to remind clients is like, this is a relationship that you cultivated and you're pretty happy, right? Like, and these are usually clients that I've been working with for a while. So I can make some well-informed guesses about how they feel about the relationship while also getting them to tell me, like, how do they feel about the relationship. But, helping them feel confident in their ability to build a really lovely, intimate, respectful, consistent relationship. I like to remind them, well, you did that already. Here it is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
To help them like feel that level of confidence in themselves. Like, I can do that. I'm not just some like screwed up, fucked up, unlovable person. Like, I can build a really strong relationship.
Yeah. That's why I'm such a proponent of just like being a human as a therapist, because you're saying you could take this as a template for other relationships. But what if you're like completely blank slate? You offer nothing about your reactions to your clients, right? Like, I think it's important that a client knows that what they're sharing with me is landing in like a very tender way, or like I'm really emotionally moved by it. It's one of, it's an attachment need to feel felt. And so it's really something that I hope I'm using judiciously. That it makes a difference to feel like you're in the room with a human being.
Agreed. Especially, I just want to say I want to repeat what you said. Letting a client know that something they said, something they shared with you really landed with you. I think that's like so beautifully said. Yeah. You want to be able to feel like the person gets it. That when you're sharing something, and it doesn't even have to be something super heavy. It could be really great news. And could you imagine going to your therapist and be like, I don't know, I got that promotion I've been working so hard for, and they're just like dead in the face.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine? Yes. I would be like, well, this isn't going to work.
Did you kind of get that training? I did, of like,
yes.
You really want
blank
to be
slate.
Mindful of what blank
girl.
slate. You want to be mindful of what congratulations might sound like to your clients. Like, are you kidding me? Like, they got this job that they've been dying to get forever. Like, but for a while in my early days of therapy, I was like, okay,
that was considered
I'll
best
be your
practices.
therapy robot.
Right. Just like, good job. Great. But like excited.
And how does that make you feel?
Yeah. How does that make you feel? Yeah, very that. So I've found that a lot of folks, when they think of inner child work, they think it is simply being mushy and giving in to whatever whim or indulgence or, that this, inner child has. How do you respond to someone? What do you want folks to know that might be worried about that? What would you like for them to understand about inner child work and what it actually looks like?
Yeah. Oh, this is something that I have perspective on, again, in the realm of parenting, because you know how there are therapeutic modalities. There are also parenting modalities.
Yes. Oh,
which
my God.
I learned.
There are parenting coaches I follow on Instagram that I'm like, I'm using that on my clients.
All the time.
All the time.
It's all the same stuff.
All the time. Yes.
It totally is. So there's a lot of backlash to this. Have you heard of gentle parenting?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what we were talking about with IFS. I think it's one of those things where the modality gets conflated with how people use it.
Yep.
And people do think of gentle parenting as like, let me even think of an example, like, oh, okay, you're screaming at me. Your feelings are valid.
Yeah.
I see. Right?
Oh, you want to punch me in the face? I totally get it.
I totally get it. Please
Absolutely,
do.
you can punch me in the face.
Right? Just
no.
like letting your kids walk all over you.
Right.
Which is itself problematic for the child.
For the
it's
child,
not just
right.
problematic for the relationship. It is that would be harmful because kids don't want that much power. They want to be reined in. And so gentle parenting isn't that, but that's how people think of it. Setting that name aside, I kind of use an approach from an expert named Janet Lansbury. It's called respectful parenting.
Respectful
and
parenting. Okay.
Yeah, which all parenting is, but it's essentially about validating your kids' emotions. Yes, like making space when you can, but also validating, like prioritizing your own boundaries.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, you're telegraphing to the kid some discomfort in any given moment, right? And holding your kids to standards. And so going back to inner child work, like that's part of it.
Yeah.
Right? If we do the example of, I don't want to go to school, it's, hey, tell me more. You don't want to go to school. Oh, you don't want to go to school because you're going to miss your mommy and daddy. That makes so much sense. Of course. Let's think about this. Mm-hmm. You're going to see your mommy and daddy after school. What can you do while you're at school? Right? So it's problem solving with yourself from that place of regulation. And so I'm saying this from like parent to child, but you can do this work with yourself too, of like, okay, I have to do this thing. I do have to get this thing done. Or I do want to push myself in this way because it could yield this great outcome. But I am scared. It makes sense to be scared.
Right.
And okay, what could I do to make this just like a little bit easier, a little bit more manageable?
Right.
So never just like, okay, don't go to school. Okay, just don't do the thing. It's
okay, don't pay
like,
your taxes.
Really?
It's so boring. Fine, don't pay your taxes. Right. It's not about indulge. I mean, again, I wish there was a therapeutic intervention that told me you don't have to pay your taxes. I'd be like, great. That's that. I'm going to do that. Perfect.
My therapist ruined my life. I'd be writing that article for The Cut. I am in prison.
And now I'm in prison. Yeah. It is not about it's not about being under any delusion about like the world we live in where there are expectations and rules and laws and all of those things. And it is not about giving into any and every indulgence, but rather what I'm hearing you say, Christy, is that it's about understanding where those indulgences or needs or feelings come from. And then having a conversation about that, getting to the crux, to the like nuts and bolts of what's really going on here. And then, like you said, negotiating or sort of like navigating that conversation from a place of like being grounded, being regulated and curious and understanding, while also recognizing, I have to pay my taxes. Like I do have to do that. And so I need to figure this out from a place of like, yep, I totally understand.
Yes. Yeah. People often think, and I definitely thought this too, that it is the practice of reparenting is this like very indulgent. I've got to like slow down and light candles. And it can just be kind of instantaneous, especially as you're practicing it more and more. It can be this little moment of like, something's happening. I don't feel like doing this. What's that about? Oh, you know what? It's because like it's an anxiety provoking thing. Of course. Yeah. Okay. What do I need to do? Right. Like, it should just be that quick. Inside of yourself. And it's not lost on me, by the way, that this is parts work, right? Like this is
100%. Yes, 100%.
Your parent and child self.
Right. One of the things that I like to tell clients is, the example I use, because I try to start out with like low stakes examples to like drive a point home, or to sort of like, let's oversimplify this and then we can like build on this skill with more complex situations. But like, I'll be like, sometimes I don't want to take out the trash. And so there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to take out the trash. I want to watch TV. I want to play video games. Like, that's what I want to do. And I'll be like to myself, Omar, I totally get it. So if you need to take out the trash with like a bitchy stink face on, if you want to have like a sourpuss face on while you take out the trash, like, you can do that. You don't have to have a smile on your face while taking out the trash. And that is one example, to your point, of like a little micro moment, a little reparenting moment where like, I totally get it. This does have to get done. You don't have to be happy about it. Like, you can be pissed. You can like walk down the stairs and stomp your feet and be like, fucking do that and take out the trash, and that's totally fine. And that's like one example that I often give clients when especially when they bring up this fear of, it's just like, I'm just like giving in to this kid that wants candy all the time. And, you know, that my response is, well, no. This is usually what that looks like. It's something like this, actually, where you do the thing and you're like, I'm not fucking happy about this, but I'm doing it. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. That's totally fair.
You are just taking pages out of parenting books. I swear. Like,
no, for
that's
real.
really good
for
parenting.
Real. It's really so many parenting coaches that I respect. It's a lot of their advice and guidance that I incorporate into a lot of the modalities that we've been trained, like in school and stuff like that. I just find it so relevant.
And it's just so different from what many of us got, myself included, right? Like we got parents who either, like, you're having this reaction, they walk away, they're ignoring you. You get parents who yell at you for having feelings. You get parents who call you names.
Right. You
get parents who like think they're like doing a good job by like helping you do every little thing, hovering over you. This is really counter to our programming in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah, exactly. How do you feel, or what are your thoughts on, like, the more that therapy, knowledge, language, research becomes, democratized, the more that happens and the more that it becomes more accessible with social media, it's just like, it's like in the zeitgeist more. What are your thoughts on this phenomenon? And I've asked so many people this question, but I just love hearing everyone's take on this, because I think most of us, especially licensed professionals, have, some complex feelings around this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what do you feel and think about more and more, folks, licensed or otherwise, bringing this information to social media and it sort of being more accessible?
I would love to hear your thoughts too, because I feel like it has taken so many different iterations in the time that I've been a therapist. It's so different now. Like, on one hand, it's great, right? Like, when I remember being in grad school and learning about like somatic experience of emotions, I had never heard of that idea before.
Right.
I'd never heard anything about my body being important to my emotional well-being. I didn't know that. And I remember thinking, like, this is gatekeeping bullshit. Like, we gotta get this out there. 100%. We need to let the people know. And so for that reason, I'm grateful. I think a lot of clients come in with knowledge. They know the terms. They know what their attachment style is.
Right.
More so, they know what their partner's attachment style is. I think that's what I want to emphasize.
Amen.
But, they come in with more information than they used to, which is really cool. It means we can maybe like skip some parts of the process. Unfortunately, they also come in with misinformation. They come in with limited information, and like there's so many, like, the zeitgeisty words, the topics, the narcissism, like even I think complex PTSD can fall under this category of just ways people are so inclined to try to find a label rather than kind of appreciate their own individual unique experience. That, it does kind of lend itself to, one, misinformation, and two, I think sometimes like a lack of curiosity that can be harmful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it can actually, the accessibility can sometimes actually lead to a limitation and a lack of curiosity and like a rigidity of, so it's this and that's, I'm avoidantly attached. And then they organize, period. That's it. Right. Full stop. And then they organize their entire identity through around that, and then every behavior they look at through the lens of, well, it's because I'm avoidant, and then it's everything from like. And the reason, I'm laughing because I'm like, I understand what they're trying to do. Like, they're trying to understand themselves. But sometimes I laugh because they're like, oh, yeah, well, I returned those shoes because I'm avoidantly attached. And I'm like, well, wait, what? I'm like, no, you returned them because they didn't fit. What are you talking about?
I could not commit to these shoes.
No, it's a lot of that. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's
I know. Yeah, it ends up just being another way to beat yourself up. It's like, we've had enough of those.
For real, yes. And one of the things that I also, and I do this in as like gentle and clinical a way as possible, but it's a little bit of like this is another way of being like self-obsessed, and we got, which also isn't super helpful.
What a great point.
What I mean, right? Like, this is whether you are constantly, quote unquote, doing the work or beating yourself up, or being super selfish and, self-indulgent. It's like those are all sort of varying sort of degrees of being self-obsessed or like different branches of self-obsession that are attached to the same tree trunk. So, so to speak. And it's like, we got to get you out of your head a little bit more. You returned the shoes because they didn't fit. That's why you returned them. It's not because you couldn't commit to them.
Let it be.
Let it right.
Let it be.
Right. I think
that's such a good point, Omar. It's such a good point. That I do think people come into therapy sometimes being like, this feels indulgent. I don't want to be navel gazy. And I'm like, fair. Like, I really do get, like, we do run the risk of that. And especially the way, like, therapy speak is kind of permeating the I don't know, Instagram sphere.
Yeah.
I do think watching video after video after video about your avoidant attachment just places so much energy on you.
Right.
And not on your partner or your community or right. Like, which
your
is also part of your mental emotional well-being being an effective human.
Right. Right. I mean, I have similar thoughts. On one end, because I totally agree. I remember learning things in grad school and being like, oh my God, like, we need more people to know this. Like, how can we get this out there? And there was not a single discussion. I'd love to know if you had the same experience. There was not a single discussion in grad school about social media other than you really should consider being private. If you have a social media account, you should probably be private. They never said like you should be private, but they were basically saying like be private. And you certainly should not make any effort to become any kind of like public figure. Like, these are not your clients. And if you are treating your followers like clients, there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of like ethical implications. There's a lot, right? Like, which I understood, but that was the end of the conversation. But that was it. So seeing what it's turned into now is such a far cry from what the conversations used to be like in the classroom, which were basically like, don't do it. That's it. You better not.
Flat out. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like right now you are committing a sin
by
having this podcast, right? And talking about like, sometimes I feel like I'm a bad therapist. I mean, for back then when we were getting, I hope that that's not still what's being taught in grad school.
I have no idea. I should ask around. Okay. But I want
to too now.
I would love to know. I mean, it's unavoidable, social media at this point. It's so ingrained. Yes. I mean, to your point, clients are coming in with knowledge, not necessarily from a previous therapist, but from their favorite Instagram person, from their favorite
Yes.
TikTok person. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
And am I sometimes referencing TikToks? Yes.
yeah,
Like,
100%.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I
It
need to
is
know
really
what the
useful.
kids are listening to. So I need to
fresh.
understand, where is everyone getting this information from? Yeah. So on one end, the accessibility I love. As you know, therapy can be so expensive, prohibitively expensive. And that's a whole other conversation. And at the same time, we have to figure out how to not flatten everything, where now everyone is avoidantly attached, everyone is insecurely attached, everyone is this or that or what, and we have to sort of figure out, right? Like, I think the call to action is, okay, this is sort of, accessibility is great, and this is the part of accessibility, this is part of the tension that we need to figure out. We have to have more conversations around, well, hold on, slow down, no, let's take in a little bit more nuance, or how can you find out a little bit more, or how can we use Instagram or social media in general as, like, I don't know, a precursor to actual therapy or actual research, you know what I mean? And how to use it that way to lead you, down a path of self-discovery versus a path of, like, again, rigidity. I am this.
Perfectly said. I like this idea of, like, flattening.
Yeah. And I've even noticed some therapists, and I get the intention, but I've noticed some therapists, I feel like, get a little too upset at, like, oh, they're using the word narcissism and that can cause harm. And I'm like, I
True.
totally hear you. I get it. And I don't know if it's exactly causing harm in this situation. Like, I understand, again, like, why we can't just throw around these words willy-nilly.
Think about it. Yeah.
But, if
somebody
also
grew up with a narcissistic parent and came across a reel where somebody used that word, maybe even imperfectly, but, like, it still meant something to them.
Right.
Like,
It's still, I think that's the
only
thing.
good.
Is like talking a little bit more amongst each other, therapists, talking a little bit more about what it means to the client, why these words mean so much to them, versus us wagging our fingers at them, being like, they shouldn't use that word, which feels, again, I'm of mixed feelings, because I've done that. I've been like, well, that's not how we use that word, and you need to be careful, and that is reckless and irresponsible. And like, maybe I need to calm down a little bit and just sort of talk to them about, this clearly means a lot to you. Why? Why does it mean so much to you?
How about get curious?
How about get curious?
It's good parenting.
Yes.
Is it not?
Yes. Tell me more. You know what I mean?
Tell me more.
We could talk about, I feel like we could talk, there should be like one class for a semester's worth of, like, classwork, coursework on therapy and social media, like, could easily be done, just like navigating the complexities of that and how to incorporate social media into your own practice, because again, that was never discussed, like how you could use social media to grow your practice if you wanted to go into private practice, or to help with your nonprofit if you were running, an agency. Again, it was like, stay away. It better be private, and that's that. So it's obviously changing.
Yes.
One question. I'm sorry. Were you about to say something?
No,
okay,
that I'm going to audit your class when you inevitably run that.
Thank you.
I'm going to take it.
So, Christy, one question that I ask all my guests is, what is one piece of advice or wisdom that you got from the mental health world that you take with you everywhere you go, that is sort of like at the core of who you are? So this could be something that you got from your own therapist. This could be something you got from a book, a podcast, a show, a friend, whatever. Just something that is sort of like at the core of how you navigate the world.
Yeah, so I knew you were going to ask this question. And at first I panicked. I was like, why don't I have anything? And especially, like, from my therapy specifically, I wanted to, like, give you a little nugget from, like, a really, like, zinger my therapist gave me.
Yeah.
But, the therapists that I've worked with, and I practice in this way too, that is more experiential, is more about, like, the kind of ineffable goodness of therapy that we can't, words fail to describe. So, but I love psychoeducation. So like I've got stuff that I really go to a lot. And related to this subject, I think the thing I reach for the most is the concept of self-compassion, and specifically Kristen Neff, who is a researcher and kind of like thought of as the expert on this concept.
Kristen Naft?
Yes, okay. Kristen Neff. She and Chris Germer have like a program for how to integrate or incorporate more self-compassion into your life. But, you know, one, she's just like a really good communicator on this topic. And she describes self-compassion as being an essential skill for suffering, right? Like, again, people might think of it as like, I'm going to be, you know, like mushy gushy with myself. People like think of it, confuse it with self-care and assume like, okay, I'm going to go get a bubble bath, right? Like self-compassion is, you're going to suffer, and here is the voice, the response that you want to use in that moment. And so she's got this 3-tenet model, wherein the first is mindfulness of your suffering. So you have to be able to say like, wow, I'm having a hard time. Oh, and another big piece of this is like, she wants you to it's like the best therapist trick in the book. Like, how would you say this to a really dear friend instead of to yourself, right? Well, to yourself, you'll say, hey, you piece of shit, get up. To your friend, you'll say
probably something different.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully something
unless you're really, really comfy with that friend or like in a toxic relationship. But yeah, so that first step of being mindful, so kind of like looking inward, noticing like the body sensations, noticing kind of the dialogue, even if you are being really self-critical, just being like, wow, I'm having a really hard time. Full stop.
Right.
Like, and sometimes with clients, I'll just see what that feels like to apply that message to yourself. I'm having a hard time. And then the next step is common humanity. So this idea that suffering is the human experience. You're not weird for going through this. And also you're not alone. Like someone somewhere is having this very similar kind of pain that you're having. And that's not to diminish your pain. It's just to like connect you to the human tapestry of
human
pain.
Condition.
Right. Yeah. And so kind of like taking a moment to connect with your common humanity. And then the last step is self-kindness, which I love for this conversation, because a lot of times people are like, okay, I'll be kind to myself. I'll stay in bed. Right? Or, okay, I'll be kind to myself. I'll get myself, a treat.
Right.
And kindness, I mean, if you are friends with somebody who is really kind, they don't just tell you lovely things about yourself. They also help you see yourself with clarity. They hold you to important tasks that you want to complete. They hold you to your goals. Like that is kind too.
Right. They're not just buying you chocolate or treats and gifts. Right. Right.
And it's so like what you were saying with taking out the garbage of like, yep, you're allowed to like really make a fuss about it inside of yourself. You're allowed to have a stink face, right? But you're gonna get this done, right? That's so kind. And anyway, I love it as like I love having steps, right? I love knowing, okay, I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, and on the other side of that, either I feel better or I don't. Right. But at least I took a moment to engage with myself and my pain.
It seems like your ability to be compassionate, your what's the word I'm looking for? Your ability to be compassionate, I can't think of the word. It's going to drive me. No, I'll think of the word when we're done, of course.
I cannot wait.
Your capacity for that's what it is. Your capacity for compassion is directly related to your capacity for suffering. It's like your ability to do one helps your ability to do the other. Is like what I'm understanding from
So I love that. Stealing that.
Yeah.
I just like that idea that like the more you can allow suffering, the more and suffering is like a big word. People might
Yeah.
feel a little threatened by it. So like
Sure.
having a hard time is sort of what I like to say. The
Yeah.
more you can allow yourself to just like have a hard time, the more you're going to be able to be responsive to it. And just like you said, the kind of paradoxical thing is that when you find yourself allowing hard feelings, it just makes it so much easier to manage them.
Yeah.
It does.
Thank you so much. I love that advice, especially, or rather that like nugget of wisdom, especially because it focuses on compassion versus like a perfect outcome, which I appreciate, right? It doesn't focus on the eradication of difficulty or friction or suffering. That's not what these interventions are about. That's not the hope here, that you never have a hard time ever again and you're never sad.
Yes.
It's about accepting the reality of the human experience, which is there are going to be hard times, and letting that exist, and then choosing to making a choice around like how you want to respond to the suffering. That's especially when you choose compassion and kindness and respect, right? Which isn't, again, right, listeners, it's not about indulging in recklessness or indulging in being irresponsible. It's actually quite the opposite, right? It's about being curious and firm and understanding while still being like, and you got to get that done. Like, and this is the reality. This is the world we live in. Like, you can't not pay your bills. Sorry.
Yep. Kristen Neff talks a lot about like gestures of self-compassion, like putting your hand on your chest, around your face. And she also talks about like using a kind name, which for me, like, I never feel better than when a friend is like, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, I love, but it doesn't sound nice, but you know, that like friendly bitch, like that way.
Yes. When they, it's like a particular tone when they're calling you in. They're calling you in that moment. Yes, bitch. You're like, I know. It's, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I really appreciate, in your ability to take something and sort of apply it to what works for you, which is I'm constantly encouraging people to do that. So I think that was a perfect example, right? There's an encouragement to call yourself like a kind name, and it's like, okay, like sure, and sometimes just from a really good friend, bitch. Like sometimes that's actually what you need. You know what I mean? And
but for somebody else, that would not be the right.
Yeah, not from like the random stranger in the bodega. Yes, but from like a trusted companion.
It works. What can I say?
Yes, yeah, exactly. There is like a loving tone. It's possible to say that with a loving, caring tone, for sure. One of the things I wanted to kind of like rewinding a little bit. So we talked about, IFS, and we talked about inner child work, and in the beginning of the podcast, we talked about like these accusations and allegations about like this modality doesn't work, and here's why it doesn't work, and sort of like it kind of reminds me of. This isn't a perfect one-to-one, folks. Do not scream at me for this. But a little bit of like separating the art from the artist. There's an element of that I recognize in like separating the therapist from the modality. Now, when it comes to therapeutic interventions, that's a lot more cut and dry. You know what I mean? Separating the art from the artist isn't always possible because, like, if you buy their art, then you're sort of funding their terrible behavior. So it's a little bit different. I recognize that.
And I haven't heard the allegations about Richard Schwartz. I don't know. But I mean, people take these trainings. I mean, it is.
Yeah. So the article talks about him specifically. So I really cannot wait to hear like your thoughts on it after you read it. But yes, they talk about him specifically, and he has like a number two, like a right-hand man kind of person that's also in the mix that they talk about. But in any case, when it comes to inner child work, can you imagine a client that maybe that wouldn't necessarily work for or land well with? One of the things that I find helpful not only as a clinician, but it's just like as a human being, is when I'm presented with an option, being told, so here's how and why this might help you. And here's what to look out for just in case this isn't working. Here's what you really should be keeping an eye out for to make sure that we're, reducing the chance of harm, lowercase h harm, but also capital H harm. But, like keeping an eye out for when and why this might not be working out for you. Do you have a client or a type of person in mind where you're like, inner child work may not be good for you either right now, or maybe it'll never be good for you, but just, I'm curious to hear what you think who that client might be.
That's a great way of asking it, because it actually triggered a memory for me of a client. So I also do EMDR, which
Ooh, okay.
Do you do EMDR too?
I don't know. I'm not trained.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trained in EMDR, and early in my training, for those who don't know what that is, it's a very focused trauma intervention that it involves bilateral stimulation, sometimes tapping yourself, eye movements, and I remember working with someone who did have a lot of childhood trauma, and it was kind of startling how when they kind of got into the bilateral stimulation, they became so dysregulated. There's affect, there's emotion, there's like expressing how you feel about something, and then there's dysregulation, just like completely entering like sympathetic activation territory. And I think for those who do this work, one on like in a not safe way, like maybe that IFS practitioner, right? Or who do this work without the necessary skills to regulate kind of unexpected emotions that can come up in the process. It's stuff I wouldn't introduce too early on in the work with my clients. I mean, I say that. I think it can, certainly I've done a portrayal like in a second or third session. But that's using clinical judgment that like, okay, I've got somebody who's not going to dissociate. I've got somebody who, isn't like actively self-harming, actively suicidal. So that those would be my concerns and considerations. And I do think there's a way of doing inner child work that is kind of like, it does sort of set your adult self aside and sort of enable you to be self-focused, like you were saying. And people with personality disorders, although they tend to have a lot of this kind of complex trauma, they might struggle with some of the interventions around inner child work. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, because oftentimes when clinicians talk about an intervention, especially one that they have either come up with or dedicated their entire professional career around, they will present interventions as this sort of like magic bullet, this works for everybody. And
good point.
Listen, I would love for someone to invent a modality that worked on everybody. Do you know how easy our jobs would be if there was just this one proven technique and method that no matter what the diagnosis, no matter what the trauma, no matter what the background, it worked, quote unquote? Like, I would, sign me up, please. But I'm just always so skeptical of that because I generally don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate a clinician that can say, so here are some things to look out for. Here are some clients where you might want to like slow down this process, or here's how you might want to alter this intervention a little bit for this particular client. Because as you know, Christy, trauma work, if someone doesn't have like a solid foundation of like self or identity or support or resources, trauma work can be incredibly triggering, like capital T triggering. Not and I'm not talking I'm uncomfortable, I'm squirming in my seat. I'm talking like completely dissociating, shutting down, just like having, a psychotic break, like really, really serious shit. And being able to say like, if those clients don't, if there's a client that doesn't have those foundations, we run the risk of these things happening. So, we need to sort of like slow down or take it back to the basics, or we need to make sure that that they have a psychiatrist that they trust. We have to make sure that, they have stable housing first, or we have to there's all these other things that are so important to a person's health. So again, I just really appreciate your ability to talk about. So this is the client where this may not be the best. It may not be the best intervention for them, because I don't hear that often. So I really appreciate your ability to speak on it.
Yeah, it also, all of those things are true. And being trauma informed is about making sure the client is always in the driver's seat. So another type of client I wouldn't use this with is somebody who's like, I don't like this, right? Like somebody who's like, I don't respond to the idea of myself having an inner child.
Of course.
Like that, if I'm to be like, yeah, but you do, and you need to meet them, right? Like that is so invalidating. That is so re-traumatizing.
Of course. Thank you for bringing that up. It's one of those moments where I'm like, oh yeah, duh. The client who's like, I hate this. Right. Don't use it on that. Oh, duh. Yes. That one too. That client too. Don't use it on that.
It's like surprisingly hard to follow that as a rule, because sometimes you feel such a conviction, like, oh, this would be so good for you.
But I promise you. Yeah. But if someone's like, I'm not resonating with this. This isn't landing with me. I don't like this. Like, right. Of course. Respect. Like you said, the client's in the driver's seat. I forgot about that, Christy. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. If they don't like sometimes. It. Right. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Where can folks find you if they want to follow you, if they want to reach out to you, if they want you as their therapist, which I highly recommend. She's awesome. Where can folks find you?
Well, okay. One, I've just had so much fun. So I want to say that first. This has been a blast and I adore you. And I just want to say publicly on the air, when I first met you, it was a dark period of my life. I was a new therapist.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this person, I came to a staff meeting for the first time. And I was like, this person is so lovely and warm. And then immediately it was announced that it was your last day. Yeah. So I was like, great. Okay. So,
like,
but then we worked in proximity to each other still. But anyway, so it is like, you're doing such a wonderful job with this podcast. And I'm beyond touched that I get to be on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And in terms of where you can find me, I will start Instagramming more.
Okay.
I will.
You heard it here, first, folks. Yeah. We're your accountability partners.
Yeah, I've got a lot of hangups about it, but it's important, and I like this stuff. And anyway, I'm at Christy O'Shoney Therapy, I do believe.
Great.
And O'Shoney is spelled O-S honey.
Great.
So that's where you can find me. You can also find me on my website, ChristyO'Shoney.com. And on the subject of inner child work, I'm going to be leading a group in the new year for folks who want to do some of this work in that kind of context.
Oh my God. A group?
Yeah.
A group? How big?
Yes.
How big is the group? Do you know yet? Ish?
The group is going to be, I'm still recruiting for it. So
Okay.
the group is going to be up to probably 8 people. It's going to be
Wonderful.
virtual. Yeah, so I'm
gosh,
really
that's
excited
fantastic.
about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, y'all. So if you're interested in exploring this, this doesn't mean that you have to commit to inner child work for the rest of your life, but it sounds like this could be a great sort of like introduction into inner child work. And maybe it's not, for folks that are maybe afraid of like, oh, it'll be just like me in there. There's a group. Other folks will be doing it with you. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and if you go to the sign up page for that, I think it's ChristyO'Shoney.com/inner-child. You'll find I preface it with so much like, I know this sounds cheesy. I promise you, if you think it's cheesy, I do too. But right, so that's kind of the vibe. Like everybody who's signing up,
perfect,
kind of gets like this is goofy and it's important.
Oh, and I mean, I don't know. I kind of like that. I goofy can be kind of fun. So I'm down for goofy. That sounds lovely. All right, folks. So yeah, Christy and I, we're both therapists, but this podcast is no substitute for good old-fashioned therapy. So take what's useful, leave the rest, and don't forget, therapy makes you hotter. Bye.